May 10th, 1945, near Regensburg, Germany. The war in Europe is over. The guns have finally fallen silent. Yet across the battered German countryside, thousands of defeated soldiers continue marching into captivity under American guard. The roads are crowded with columns of Wehrmacht prisoners. Trucks rumble through villages scarred by years of war. Burned-out vehicles line the roadsides. The Third Reich has collapsed, but not everyone has accepted defeat. In a sprawling temporary prisoner camp outside Regensburg, rows of German POWs stand behind newly erected barbed wire fences. Former soldiers of Hitler's armies huddled together beneath a cold gray sky. Many have not eaten properly for days. American field kitchens arrive shortly after dawn. Large steel kettles are unloaded from trucks. Steam rises into the chilly morning air. The smell of hot soup drifts across the compound. For many prisoners, it is the first decent meal available in weeks. American cooks begin filling metal containers. Military police supervise distribution. Everything appears routine. Then something unexpected happens. The first group of German prisoners refuses the food. An American sergeant stares at them. Perhaps they do not understand. An interpreter is called forward. The offer is repeated. Again, the prisoners refuse. Soon dozens are refusing. Then hundreds. Word spreads rapidly through the compound. Many prisoners insist they will not eat food prepared by Americans. Some claim they are afraid of being poisoned. Others insist the war is not truly over. A few fanatics still cling to Nazi propaganda that has filled their minds for years. The American guards exchange puzzled looks. Most have never seen hungry men reject food. Especially now. Especially after everything Germany has endured. The camp commander immediately reports the situation. By afternoon, the information has traveled through military channels. Eventually, it reaches 3rd Army headquarters. General George S. Patton listens carefully as an officer explains the problem. The room falls silent. Patton's reaction is immediate. The general has spent years fighting across North Africa, Sicily, France, and Germany. He has watched soldiers endure hunger, exhaustion, and combat. Now he is being told that captured German soldiers are refusing perfectly good food. Patton leans back in his chair. His expression hardens. What exactly are they refusing? He asks. Standard Army rations, sir. And they're hungry? Yes, sir. Patton shakes his head. The war has ended. American soldiers have spent years risking their lives. Now American resources are being used to feed the very army that helped plunge Europe into disaster. Yet some of those prisoners are refusing the food out of pride, ideology, or suspicion. To Patton, the situation sounds absurd. He gives a short order. If they refuse to eat, nobody will force them. The prisoners have made a choice. They can live with it, or without it. The message travels back down the chain of command. No special meals. No negotiations. No alternative arrangements. The food will be available. If the prisoners refuse it, that is their responsibility. The first day passes. Many prisoners continue refusing meals. Some remain stubborn. Others begin questioning the wisdom of their decision. The smell of fresh food fills the camp several times a day. Yet large numbers continue turning it away. American guards watch with growing disbelief. By the second day, the mood begins to change. The prisoners are visibly weaker. Arguments break out among the Germans themselves. Older veterans who have experienced years of hardship criticize younger fanatics. Some accuse Nazi loyalists of misleading the rest. Others insist they must remain united. Hunger is becoming a weapon. Not one imposed by the Americans. One imposed by their own decisions. At headquarters, reports continue reaching Patton. The general listens, then returns to his work. His position remains unchanged. Nobody is preventing the prisoners from eating. The kitchens are operating. The food is available. The choice belongs entirely to the men behind the wire. By the morning of the third day, conditions inside the camp are noticeably different. The proud defiance that existed 48 hours earlier has begun to fade. Men sit quietly near the fences. Faces appear gaunt. Voices are softer. The smell of soup drifting from the field kitchens is becoming impossible to ignore. And for the first time since the standoff began, several prisoners approach the food line. They hesitate, then step forward. The barrier is beginning to crack. What happens next will spread through the camp faster than any rumor. Because once the first prisoners accept American food, the entire confrontation starts to unravel. And General Patton is about to make a personal visit that nobody inside the camp will ever forget. May 13th, 1945. Rain falls steadily across the prisoner camp. The ground has turned into a sea of mud. Boots sink with every step. Guard towers rise above the barbed wire like dark silhouettes against the gray morning sky. Inside the compound, the atmosphere has changed completely. 3 days without food have taken their toll. The confidence that once filled the camp is gone. The arguments have stopped. The slogans have stopped. Even the most stubborn. Prisoners are struggling to ignore the hunger twisting inside their stomachs. Near one fence line, several German soldiers sit silently beneath soaked blankets. A few stare toward the American field kitchens. Steam rises from the cooking kettles. The smell drifts across the camp. Every prisoner notices it. Every prisoner feels it. Shortly after sunrise, a convoy of American vehicles approaches the camp. Military police immediately move into position. Officers step aside. Word spreads rapidly among the guards. General Patton has arrived. A jeep rolls through the entrance. Patton steps out wearing his polished helmet and weathered field jacket. Mud splashes beneath his boots as he surveys the compound. Several officers accompany him. The general says little. He simply walks. His eyes move across the rows of prisoners. Thousands of German soldiers watch him. Some recognize him immediately. By now, Patton's reputation is known throughout Europe, to friend and foe alike. The American officers escort him toward the food distribution area. Large kettles of soup sit over portable field stoves. Army cooks continue their work. Nothing has changed. The meals have been prepared exactly as before. The only difference is that now, the prisoners are hungry enough to reconsider. Patton listens as camp officers explain the situation, how the refusals began, how the prisoners insisted they would not eat American food, how many remained stubborn even after 2 full days. The general's expression remains unreadable. Then he notices movement. A German sergeant is approaching the food line, slowly, cautiously, as though crossing an invisible boundary. The man reaches the serving area. For several seconds, he simply stands there. American cooks wait. German prisoners watch. The entire moment feels strangely important. Finally, the sergeant extends his mess tin. An American cook fills it with soup. The prisoner stares at the food, then quietly walks away. Nothing dramatic happens. No speeches. No confrontation. No punishment. Yet the effect is immediate. Other prisoners begin moving toward the line, one after another, then dozens, then hundreds. The resistance is collapsing. Hunger is proving stronger than pride. Patton watches the scene unfold. One officer beside him smiles slightly. The general does not. His attention remains fixed on the prisoners. Many of these men are exhausted. Many have been fighting for years. Some are barely adults. Others are veterans who survived multiple campaigns. Now the war is over. Their cause is gone. Their government is gone. And reality is finally beginning to replace propaganda. Later that afternoon, Patton tours other sections of the camp. He speaks briefly with American guards. Checks sanitation conditions. Reviews supply arrangements. Everything must function properly. These prisoners may be enemies, but they are now under American responsibility. That responsibility matters. As the inspection continues, another interesting development occurs. Several German officers request permission to meet camp authorities. The request is granted. Inside a temporary administrative building, they admit what many already know. The refusal campaign has failed. The prisoners want food. Regular food distribution can resume. American officers record the statement. The crisis is effectively over. By evening, long lines stretch across the camp. Thousands of prisoners receive meals. The same food they rejected 3 days earlier. The same food that had been available from the beginning. As darkness settles over the compound, camp guards notice a remarkable change. Conversations return. Energy returns. The tension begins fading. For the first time in days, the camp feels stable again. Back at headquarters, reports arrive summarizing the outcome. Patton reads them briefly, then places them aside. For him, the lesson is obvious. The prisoners were never denied food. They denied it to themselves. And eventually, reality forced them to abandon the illusion. But the story is not over. Because in the days that follow, American intelligence officers begin interviewing German prisoners about why they refused the food in the first place. What they discover reveals just how deeply Nazi propaganda had penetrated the minds of many soldiers, and some of the answers shock even veteran interrogator. The interrogations begin the next morning. Inside a series of temporary wooden buildings near the camp headquarters, American intelligence officers sit across from captured German soldiers. The war is over. The fighting has ended. For the first time in years, many of these men can speak freely. and the Americans want answers. One question appears on nearly every report. Why did they refuse the food? At first, the answers seem unbelievable. A young German corporal explains that he had been told American forces routinely poisoned prisoners. Another insists he heard that captured Germans were deliberately starved before being shipped overseas. A third claims he believed American food contained chemicals designed to make prisoners sick. The interrogators exchange puzzled looks. The stories are absurd, yet the prisoners repeat them with complete sincerity. The deeper the questioning goes, the clearer the picture becomes. For years, Nazi propaganda had portrayed the Allies as monsters. Government-controlled newspapers, military briefings, radio broadcasts, rumors repeated from unit to unit. The message had been constant. Never trust the enemy. Even after Germany surrendered, many soldiers still believed it. One intelligence officer later remarks that some prisoners seemed more willing to trust Hitler's collapsing regime than the evidence in front of their own eyes. The irony is impossible to miss. The same prisoners who distrusted American food now stand in line 3 times a day asking for more. By midweek, hundreds of additional interviews have been completed. Patterns emerge. The younger prisoners are often the most influenced by propaganda. Many had grown up entirely under Nazi rule. They knew no other system, no other source of information. For them, years of indoctrination do not disappear overnight. Older veterans tend to view the situation differently. Many had witnessed Germany's decline firsthand. They had seen shortages, retreats, defeats, broken promises. By 1945, their faith in official propaganda had already begun to collapse. One former Wehrmacht sergeant tells his interrogator, "We were hungry. The Americans had food. The argument should have ended there." The statement appears in multiple reports. Simple, direct, impossible to argue with. As the interviews continue, camp conditions steadily improve. Regular food distribution resumes. Medical personnel examine undernourished prisoners. Supply trucks arrive daily. The crisis that once threatened camp stability is rapidly fading. Yet General Patton remains interested in the findings, not because of the food itself, but because the incident reveals something larger. An army can be defeated on the battlefield, but ideas can survive long after the shooting stops. The general discusses the matter with several senior officers. Many reach the same conclusion. The war against Nazi Germany is over. The task of rebuilding Europe has only begun. Meanwhile, inside the prisoner camp, attitudes continue changing. Men who once refused American rations now openly praise the quality of the meals. Some begin cooperating with camp authorities. Others volunteer information about former Nazi officials. The transformation is gradual but unmistakable. Reality is replacing ideology. Truth is replacing rumor. Then an event occurs that perfectly captures the change. One afternoon, an American cook notices a familiar face approaching the serving line. It is one of the prisoners who had loudly encouraged others to reject the food during the first days. The man waits quietly, mess tin in hand. No speeches, no protests, no defiance. When his turn arrives, he accepts a full serving of soup and bread. The cook smiles. The prisoner does not. Instead, he nods awkwardly and walks away. The moment lasts only seconds. Yet everyone nearby understands its meaning. The resistance is finished. Across the camp, normal routines begin taking shape. Prisoners work, eat, sleep, wait for processing and eventual release. The extraordinary confrontation that began with mass refusals is becoming history. But one final report still awaits General Patton. A detailed summary prepared by intelligence officers. Not about food. Not about discipline. About human nature. About what happens when propaganda becomes stronger than common sense. And when Patton reads the report, he delivers a response that many officers remember for years afterward. Late May 1945. The war in Europe is over. Germany has surrendered. Across the continent, millions of soldiers are laying down their weapons and beginning the long journey home. At 3rd Army Headquarters, General George S. Patton sits behind a desk covered with reports. One file in particular has captured his attention. The report concerning the German prisoners who refused American food. For several minutes, Patton reads silently. Page after page, interview after interview. The findings are remarkably consistent. Many of the prisoners genuinely believed Allied food was dangerous. Some feared poison. Others expected mistreatment. Many had simply accepted years of propaganda without question. Even after surrender, those beliefs remained powerful enough to overcome hunger itself. Patton closes the file. Several officers wait nearby. One asks what the general thinks. Patton reportedly gives a simple answer. The truth won. The room falls quiet, because that is exactly what happened. No force had been required. No punishment had been necessary. No elaborate psychological operation had been conducted. Reality had done all the work. The prisoners became hungry. The food remained available. Eventually, the facts defeated the propaganda. For Patton, the lesson is obvious. Falsehoods can influence men. They can motivate armies. They can even sustain entire governments for a time. But eventually reality arrives, and reality is difficult to argue with. In the weeks that follow, the incident becomes a small but memorable story among American personnel. Camp officers share it. Military police discuss it. Intelligence officers reference it in reports. The details vary slightly depending on who tells the story. But the central lesson remains unchanged. The prisoners were offered food. They refused. Then they learned the truth for themselves. Meanwhile, life inside the camp continues. The German prisoners receive regular meals. Medical treatment is available. Administrative processing moves forward. Thousands are eventually transferred, released, or assigned to labor details under Allied supervision. The confrontation that once seemed significant gradually fades into memory. Yet for many American soldiers, it remains unforgettable. Not because of the food, because of what it revealed. Many had spent years fighting German forces across multiple continents. They understood enemy weapons, enemy tactics, enemy strategy, but this incident exposed something different. The power of belief, the power of propaganda, the ability of a government to convince ordinary people to distrust what was directly in front of them. One American captain later writes that the prisoners taught him an unexpected lesson. Men could survive hunger. Men could survive war, but escaping years of misinformation was often much harder. As summer arrives, Europe begins rebuilding. Cities clear rubble. Families search for loved ones. Former soldiers attempt to return to civilian life. The world moves forward. Yet historians would later note that the collapse of Nazi Germany involved more than military defeat. It involved the collapse of an entire system of ideas. A system that had convinced millions to believe things that were not true. The prisoner camp became a tiny example of that larger story. Hungry men standing before steaming kettles of food, refusing to eat because they feared an enemy they had been taught to hate. Then gradually discovering that reality looked very different from what they had been told. For General Patton, the incident was never really about food. It was about choice. The prisoners had made a choice. Then they faced the consequences of that choice. When reality became impossible to ignore, they changed course. Simple, direct, practical. Exactly the kind of lesson Patton appreciated. Years later, veterans who witnessed the event would remember the strange sight. Thousands of defeated soldiers, rows of steaming field kitchens, 3 days of stubborn refusal. And the moment hunger finally overcame ideology, the war had produced countless battles, massive offensives, heroic stands, historic victories. Yet sometimes the most revealing stories occurred far from the battlefield, inside a prisoner camp, beside a bowl of soup, where reality quietly accomplished what no army could. It defeated a lie. And long after the guns fell silent across Europe, that lesson remained. Because the German prisoners survived. The American soldiers remembered. And the story endured as a reminder that truth may take time to prevail. But eventually it does.